Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody asks you why, I'm here to ask why not. So sit back and relax or walk and listen and join me on this journey as we try to answer this never-ending question: what makes people say, why not? Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So today I'm talking to Emma Golding. She is a para carriage driver and also a mindset coach. So we do kind of talk a lot about para driving, but we also talk about her own mindset and how that brought her to the coaching and things like that, and how it kind of come full circle and stuff like that. So really interesting episode. Even if you're not into horses, I think it's a really interesting sport to hear about. I hope you enjoy it. Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. Today I am joined by Emma Golding. So Emma Golding is an international carriage driver and she's also a mindset coach. So first off, welcome to the podcast, Emma. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on.
No, thank you for coming on. And just to start off, would you like to just tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yep. So, as you said, I'm a carriage driver. I am currently Ireland's only international para carriage driver. So I was paralysed in a riding accident when I was 18, and I took up carriage driving after that. And then shortly after taking up carriage driving, I took up horse driving trials, which is the sport that I do, which is based on ridden 3-day eventing. Or ridden eventing. We have 2-day events, same as eventing and stuff like that. I've been doing that for nearly 20 years now. My last international event was the World Championships in August. And at the moment, I'm driving my gelding Mossy. He's a Lipizzaner, 13-year-old Lipizzaner gelding with one eye. I love him to bits. He's my boy. He's my boy. I'm also a mindset coach. So I went through for years, I had a lot of fear, a lot of nerves, low confidence, all of that. And it made, although I loved my driving and I loved still being able to do stuff with horses, all those things, they just made it so much less enjoyable than it should have been. So even though I loved it, I wasn't enjoying it the way I should. So I went through, I saw different kind of, performance psychologists, various people, and I kind of managed to get to the bottom of all that within me. And then I wanted to help other people do the same. So I did a qualification in equestrian mindset coaching, and that's why I do that now as well.
Just to circle back just to the carriage driving for a second.
Yeah.
Could you explain what is involved in that for anyone, say, who isn't into horses and wouldn't be wouldn't know the sport?
Yeah. So you can drive ponies or horses. So people do this with Shetlands, with little Welsh Section A's, all the way up to big kind of KWPNs and Gelderlanders and those types of breeds. So it's, as I said, it's based on ridden 3-day eventing. So you've got your dressage. You can do this with a single horse or pony, a pair, which is 2 side by side, or a team of 4, which is a pair in the back and a pair in the front. I drive single. Most people in Ireland drive single. And you've got your dressage, and they're essentially looking for the same things as they're looking for in ridden dressage from the horse. So rhythm, obedience, suppleness, impulsion, straightness, all of those things. So you've got to test, it's obviously in a bigger arena than the ridden. So our arenas are 80 by 40.
So fit in the carriage as well.
Yeah, exactly. Even still, sometimes you're coming along and it's like, oh, it still feels tight if things aren't quite going the way they should be. So that's the dressage. You get your penalty score from your dressage. So the lower, the better. Then for the cross-country equivalent, so we still have roads and tracks, which is what we call our section A. You've got a set number of kilometers, and they're marked out, and you're given your time to finish in, which is a 2-minute window. So you can't finish too early or too slow. And you carry stopwatches on the carriage. So I wear a stopwatch, my groom wears a stopwatch, and we have a stopwatch on the carriage. So if any get bumped or the batteries run out, we're not losing track. So you're keeping that. That's generally a kind of clipping along trot. The cross country used to be like the ridden one. It used to be a lot more physically demanding. There used to be 5 sections instead of now we have 2, but it's been cut down for various reasons over the past kind of couple of decades. So that's our section A. Section B then is the same idea with a 3-minute window, but in that section there are between 5 and 8 individually timed obstacles. So these are what people may have seen in videos of where people are going around posts or through water, things like that. Each inside those, there's gates, which are A to F. So red on the right, white on the left. So there'll be letters on posts or trees or whatever makes up the obstacle. And the driver and the groom or grooms will walk those over and over again before the actual cross-country round, because you want to be in and out as quickly as possible, because everyone racks up penalties for every second that they're inside those obstacles that are being added to their dressage penalty score.
Okay.
So you want to be in and out as quickly as possible without making any mistakes, because mistakes will mean either more penalties or potentially elimination. So that's that. The groom does a lot in that. They're using their body weight to balance the carriage. They'll sometimes kind of move the carriage away from posts and stuff like that. And they're helping with directions and reminding the driver of things and during that. And then the show jumping equivalent is cones, where you have a course of so up to 20 numbered elements, but that can include slaloms of up to 4, can include zigzags, oxes, where you've got 2 pairs of cones really close to each other. They've got little yellow balls on top, and you have a time limit, and basically you get penalties if you hit the balls, or if the balls fall off, or if you go over time. So that's that. And then the combination with the lowest penalties at the end wins.
Wow, that's like, okay, like inventing's intense, but that sounds even more intense. Like it's like the whole fact you have to keep a carriage like from flying into things.
Yeah.
And is your groom in with you the whole time then as well?
Yeah, so they're on the back for the dressage and cones. The dressage, they're there for, because if anything goes wrong now, and obviously I'm paralyzed, so I can't get out anyway. But even for able-bodied drivers, as much as possible, you want the driver in the carriage, because that's where you have most control of the horses. So if something comes undone, if there's something, that needs to be attended to, the groom will get off and do that while the driver stays in the carriage. So in the dressage, they're there for safety. You get penalties if they speak in the dressage. They're not allowed to remind you of, if you get lost. They're sitting on the back for the cones as well, but they are allowed to speak, and they are allowed to walk the cones. So in the World Championships cones that we just did, that was my first time really properly using my groom, because they used to not be allowed to speak, or walk the course. So I'd never used my groom, but this time I did. So she was checking our split times on the screen, we had a couple of cones where I wanted to know how we were doing time wise. She was reminding me, so I asked her, and it's such a simple thing, but it's just like she was reminding me, straight, then go, straight, then go. So get straight for the cone and then pick up the speed one, and just having that voice, that reminder, it keeps you focused. so that was brilliant for that. But they really come into their own in the obstacles at, well, the cross country overall, but especially the obstacles. Because as I said, they're using their body weight. So they're leaning from side to side to keep the carriage balanced as you go around corners. They're helping with the timekeeping, with keeping track of, often you'll have the route. So kilometers, section A and section B, they'll generally be around 8 kilometers each. So section B, especially with the obstacles, if it's in a smallish area and all the obstacles are together for the sake of the spectators to make it, so they don't have to walk from one to the other, the drivers are going round the same track kind of over and over again. So you're also keeping track of compulsory flags, turning flags, all of this, and your kilometer markers are going to be, you could have kilometer 3 and kilometer 5 right next to each other. So you're keeping track of which one is actually yours, while then trying to remember going in. So they'll also direct in the obstacles. So what I do with my grooms is I say to them, just keep talking to me, and I'll only tune in if I need to, if I think that I'm going to get lost. So that way there's no delay of me saying, oh, I don't know where I'm going, things like that. So yeah, so they do a lot. Singles, so one horse or pony, and pairs, 2 horses or ponies, they have 1 groom on the back, and the teams have 2. So there's 1 person per maximum of 2 horses.
Yeah, that like really is like a good like teamwork thing that you have to have in there.
It is. It really is. And you build up, because every different kind of combinations of drivers and grooms, you've got different kind of shorthand, different ways that you like to, because if you imagine an obstacle, especially when we go to Europe, some of the obstacles, they're made up of maybe 50 posts.
Wow.
So, and you've got them all. So you're like, and everyone's different as to what they consider the top of the obstacle or the bottom, or, saying shoot or inside route, or, so you have to, it takes a while to build up that kind of shorthand. So you're both on the exact same page with regards to the directions.
Yeah, makes sense. The thing about, I suppose, the thing about carriage is like, one of the reasons I'm asking is it's very niche. Like obviously horse riding, equestrian sports are niche as it is, but like that's something even smaller. Like how did you get into that?
So after I had my accident, I didn't know about, I knew that people drove horses, kind of, for pleasure and stuff like that. I didn't know about horse driving trials as a sport. So after my accident, I tried riding again. But because my level of injury is T4, which you'll know what that means.
Yeah.
Into fitness and knowing muscles and that, but for everyone else it's very high, so it's essentially boob level. So I have no core muscle ability at all, so my balance is really bad. So I tried it and I was happy to be able to, so I went to the RDA, but all I could really do was walk on a horse with somebody either side, someone leading. I did when I went to Australia, because they had like a stock saddle. I actually went on a beach ride with just the other person, the person who owned the place, on a horse, and I just kind of held on, and the horse knew where it was going, which was great. But it wasn't giving me everything that I wanted anymore. So somebody who was helping at the RDA, she used to be groom, friend of hers who did the driving trials, and she said, why don't you try driving? So she actually organized for me to go to the driving RDA group at Festina Lente. And then as soon as I did that, like I could just, I could see the potential of it. And then that group got invited to a kind of driving day at a lady called Sarah Mullins. So she used to drive for Ireland, single horse. She still was at that time. She's now an FEI driving judge, and when we went there, and after that she asked, did I want to try driving her. He was actually, I mean, incredibly generous of her. He was her current World Championships horse.
Wow.
And she let me drive him at the same time as she was preparing to take him to a World Singles Championship the next year. So that's how I got into the sport itself.
Yeah. And is it hard to find places to compete because it's so small, like especially in Ireland, like?
So we've got our club is small, but we've got there's a really fantastic core of people who organize events. So last year we had them various places. We had Punchestown, Coilogue, where else? There's a few. There's some regular ones up north, Shane's Castle and Antrim. There's a few, there's a few other places like that. We also held some kind of 1 day / kind of short format competitions where some of them did have a dressage test that we had, and then a combined cones and obstacles, what we call World Cup driving, which is what people see the teams doing in the indoor. So like Maastricht, Olympia in the winter. So that's the World Cup driving. So we got a few of them as well. So we've got a pretty decent calendar. It's hard enough work on the people organizing because it is often the same people organizing a lot of the time, just because we are so small. But we've got a fairly full calendar developed now, which is good, and hopefully that will encourage people to give it a go if they see that there is actually stuff that they can do.
Yeah, no, it sounds like fantastic. As like a tough sport. Like it's not just people prancing around, with the.
I don't know. I'd say every horse sport is tough in its tough in its way. Yeah.
And just so touching on the accident, was that was an equestrian, a horse related accident? Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that like then? Coming back to horses after having such a severe accident, or was it something that you're always like, no, I want to still be involved in them?
Yeah, it wasn't even a question. And it wasn't even a question. I was going to do it in some way or another, and I actually started going to the RDA while I was still in the rehab in Dunleary. So that was, I mean, literally as soon as I got the okay to, that's what I was doing. So yeah, it was never a question about it, I think. And especially because I was so young, we have less fear when we're young anyway. And like when I look back now, the fact that I went and rode a horse in Australia that I didn't know, I was literally just perched on top, just holding on to the horn of the saddle. Like that was it. And then going and driving. So Yanto, his name was, the first horse that I drove. He was a 15-2 Welsh Cob stallion. Now incredibly well behaved, and I was totally safe at all times. But as you get older, you get a little bit more cautious about stuff. So it wasn't until later on that I think that it kind of started to affect me. And it wasn't just that. It was lots of different things that have taken me years to kind of unravel, and kind of come to terms with. But that would have been one of them, the fact that, that I had already been, permanently and badly injured, and there's always the potential for something else to happen. So yeah, that did affect me later on. I've come to terms with it now, but it is something that you can't really escape forever.
Would you think it would have been almost like a defiance at the time? Like instead of getting nervous, you're like, no, no, I can still do this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I was a nightmare as a patient because I was, you know, you can imagine I was 18. I just finally, you know, you turn 18, you leave school and you're like, this is it. I can do whatever I want now. And then all of a sudden I was back being told when to go to bed, what to eat, when to eat, what to do. And I totally rebelled against that. So yeah, that was probably part of it.
Yeah, but sure, look, it kept you back with the horses.
That's it. It served a purpose, and that's the thing about a lot of stuff. You know, people will start to kind of unpick things that they've done earlier in life, and they'll be like, okay, well, that wasn't really maybe the best way, but if it served a purpose at the time and it got you through it, then you know, then that's why it was that way.
Yeah, like it's a coping mechanism as well.
Exactly. That's it. Yep. Yeah, 100%.
So tell me now, what brought you then to the mindset coaching? You said you kind of things came up for you, and then you wanted to, like, obviously you went through your own kind of stuff, and then you wanted to help other people. But how did that start to come up?
So, I mean, there was a few years of my driving. So I drove a pony. So I drove Yanto. Then I drove a pony called Popeye for 8 years. He was little cob, absolutely worth his weight in gold with how good he was, and how, you know, how steady and safe. And then I drove a pony called Lucy for a season, but she had to go back to her owner. She had a melanoma lump that was just, it wasn't affecting her badly, but it meant that she was kind of bridle lame when we tried, you know, flexing and that. And we got kind of pulled up in the dress after the dressage at the World Championships, and we were able to continue once they saw she wasn't lame, but that was why. And then I started driving another borrowed pony who I then ended up buying. So this is Lily, who's my grey pony. And she was very, very forward. You know, and it was a big leap for me. And that brought up all these, you know, all these things, all these issues. So I started, I mean, I would be literally terrified every time I drove. I'd have these kind of, you know, catastrophic thoughts of, you know, something's going to go wrong. She's going to bolt. And when I say catastrophic, I mean, you know, I pictured her getting impaled on a tree and dying,
Wow.
me being seriously injured, or at least never driving again, spectators getting run over, you know, I mean, pure catastrophe. So, and it was really, I'd spend pretty much every event in tears from the fear and the nerves and the stress. Then when that happens, you add in all the stuff of, I'm letting people down. People don't want to be around me if I'm, you know, afraid and crying all the time. And, you know, so then all that kind of stuff comes in, and that just makes everything, all the original stuff, even worse. Like you can't fix fear through guilt or, you know, or shame or anything like that. It's just not possible. So the first big breakthrough for me came when I went to a day, Charlie Unwin did a day here, down at one of the hotels near the Curragh. And I signed up for that and I went to that, and I took away the stuff that I took away, the exercise and that, I threw myself into them like nobody's business. Like I've still got my diary that where, you know, and everything possible that I could take away from that. And these were techniques that I'd heard of before, you know, and some of them were, you know, some of them is just about breathing and, you know, things like that, but actually applying them consistently and, you know, and and trusting that they'd work, the difference was phenomenal. And the point at which I really realized it was I'd often, where I used to keep Lily, the arena was at the top of a hill. So, you go up and there's the hill, the kind of track alongside a couple of paddocks. And for some reason, one of my fears was always that we'd get to the top, she'd see something, she'd turn and she'd bolt back down the hill. And that was one of my recurring things. And this actually happened one day. So we're driving up and it was my fault. I wasn't holding my whip was in the whip holder, right? Because you use your whip instead of your leg, because all you've got is your reins and your voice. So you use the whip to guide or to block or whatever it is. But of course, my whip was in the whip holder. I wasn't holding it, and we're going up, and there was a couple of people up there with dogs. The dogs didn't do anything. It's just she wasn't expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
And she turned around and pissed off to the bottom of the hill. And it's fine. I pulled her up at the bottom and I picked up my whip. And because I was so focused on what I was wanting to do in that session, I wasn't even thinking about what had just happened. So I shortened up my reins, I picked up my whip, and I drove her back up the hill. And we had up to that point, one of our, most productive training sessions. And at that point, I was like, okay, this has really worked. So then I started, I did a lot more, a lot more reading, a lot more kind of development myself, a lot more, kind of figuring out different techniques and things like that worked for me. And there were times when, people would kind of talk to me about issues they were having. But I wanted to be able to, to pass on, what I'd learned, what I developed in relation to myself and all of that. But I didn't feel like I had the authority to.
Yeah.
So then Sandy Robertson, she's another kind of performance coach. She does a lot with equestrians as well. She then launched a course specifically in training to become a mindset coach for equestrians. So I was like, okay, amazing. This will add to my knowledge and my toolkits and all of that, but it'll also give me the backup to be able to to say to people, I can help you with this. So that's a very long story, but that's how I ended up doing it. So I did. She had basic and an advanced course, so I did both of those over the past few years, and then started offering the coaching myself.
Yeah, and just interesting. Did you feel like was this that you wanted to go into coaching, or it was a case of you didn't even feel comfortable like giving the advice because you didn't have anything backing up?
I mean, I certainly gave, if people wanted advice and if people wanted to know what I had done myself, I told them. But I suppose it was both. Because I know like the difference now in me, I get so much more out of not just my driving, but out of like I lacked confidence in just owning my ponies and making decisions for them. And, and part of that would come from the fact that I'd had my accident at 18. And then, so up till then, I wasn't really making decisions. I'd never owned my own pony. And then, so I kind of lost, I never had that point, that transition that people go through when they get their first, when they get their first ponies and stuff like that. So I'd kind of missed all that. So I was, even my confidence in that was really low. So yeah, I just didn't feel like I had the the authority, the ability, the confidence to be able to advise people on themselves. Yeah.
It's interesting you saying that you didn't go through the owning your first pony, but you did. It was just in a different way.
And it was later. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was because it was later, and I kept them with my trainer, so the natural thing was for her to make the decisions. So it wasn't until I moved them for COVID and distance, I moved them closer during COVID, and then we made the decision that I'd keep them closer because it was working out so well. It wasn't till that point that I was really making those decisions myself, which was very far into my actual horse owning life, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was just a different kind of route than what most people take.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting how that kind of comes up with different people. Is there certain kind of things you see crop up with clients a lot, or the equestrians similar themes?
Yeah, so there's a few. So obviously, I mean, one of them is fears and nerves, and they can stem from different places, for different people, but the outcome is often the same. Is that people will, when they think about going to ride or going to drive or whatever it is they do with their horse, they start getting that feeling of dread and the butterflies and and this is the thing, it doesn't stop us from doing it, because those of us that do it, we can't stop. It's not a choice. If it was a choice, we'd be a lot richer and have a lot more free time, but it's not a choice. So they keep doing it, even though it's not feeling good. So there's that. I suppose there's two other that crop up a lot. So one is fear of failure, and this is often with regards to competitive equestrians. That fear of making a mistake, of being judged harshly or unfairly, of letting your team down, of letting people think they're letting their horse down, all of that. That's a big one. The third one then is a fear of ruining or hurting your horse in some way, or causing them to not live up to their potential, things like that. So yeah, those are the three that tend to come up most often.
I think that's very, very common, especially around equestrians. And I suppose I know, like, it could happen in any way normal life as well, but just not necessarily involving a horse.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting as well is you were saying like competitive horse riders, but one thing, like, I've gotten very nervous before riding just in the arena with someone else who has like maybe a better looking horse, or that kind of thing, and they're fine, but here's me going, oh, they'll know I'm shite rider, like, look at me now, like, because my recently retired horse, he did not believe in going off the leg, so it was a battle, and I was like, I look like an absolute what going around here, but like, they're probably not even paying attention, they're too busy trying to get their horse to do something.
That's it. They're not paying attention, and even if they are, they're not going to be judging you harshly, or they shouldn't be. If they are, then that says more about them than it does about you, because we all have our struggles with our horses in one way or another. And it's just because they're not going through a struggle at the moment, or a struggle that you can see. So yeah,
I think it's great to see like mindset, especially in the equestrian industry, because as well as you've probably seen, like, the grassroots that we're doing the Rider Academy, and a big portion of that is mindset. And the same thing, you've got these girls coming in and they're doing stuff that I can't even think of doing, and they're doubting themselves, and like, they're amateur riders, but they're saying the whole, like, it seems to be across the board, a lot of people involved with riding come up with these issues.
It is. And what I think is really kind of refreshing is that people are talking about it now. I don't know if you noticed, I shared it, it's a good few weeks ago now. It was at I think it was at the European Championships, the dressage one. Abby Lyle, she, Horse and Hound, had a kind of short, reel of her that they posted, of her talking about the feelings of pressure and that. And my sponsored client at the moment is a multiple FEI medal winner in para carriage driving, and we're working through. She's open about about sharing this, but I'm working with her at the moment, and working through different issues that she has. So it's everybody. And I say this, there's very few people, very few athletes, very few equestrian athletes who can totally shut off other bits of their brain when they're going to compete. I think there are some, but they're a handful. That's all. The rest of us, we're all dealing with these pressures and nerves and fears and the impacts of other areas of our lives and how they're impacting on us. And that's from people right at the top of whichever sport they're doing.
I think it's easy to assume that when you're at that level, you don't worry anymore, but it's as bad, if not worse, because everyone's watching you now, and they literally are watching you, and you can see it, I suppose, because of social media as well doesn't help. Any little thing that happens in any equestrian sport, and suddenly here comes the animal welfare brigade, or and they're getting attacked, and these are people who they do care for their horses, and if something happens, none of them want anything to happen. But
the pressure, the pressure when, and I know it myself from competing at that level. The pressure is there, and it's it can be a lot. And with competing at that level is you always have a team around you as well. So there's that feeling that you're also responsible for for how good they feel, because your success or failure isn't just going to be felt by you. It's going to be felt by the people who are there, your grooms, your chef de keep, your trainer, all of that. So it adds a bit of a bit of something different.
Team's a big fair. Like, the only one that doesn't notice things don't go well is the horse.
That's it. They don't, and that's the thing, and that's what I'll often say to people. And like I say it in relation to myself, I was having a one-to-one session with somebody, and she was asking in advance, if there's anything that I specifically want to work on. And my answer was kind of no, and then I ended up going to a big long rambling thing, and I said that my ultimate goal is to win an FEI medal. And I was talking about this in relation to Mossy, and I said, in a way, the fact that he has the potential to do that adds pressure to me, because I don't want to let him down. But in reality, he doesn't care. He doesn't care whether we ever win a medal, but I want to do that, and I want to do that with him, because I think that he deserves that accolade. But yeah, in reality, he doesnont care.
He just wants a dinner later.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. They are the only ones. And that's it. That's what I said this, I was talking to, when I was having a session with Deb, who's my sponsored athlete, And we were going through about, she was talking about a fear of hers of making an error, going wrong in a dressage test. And I said, so we went through exactly what she would do if that happened. And I said, the very first thing that you want to have in your head is you do not want to let the horse know that you've gone wrong. You want to keep driving as if this is just another movement in the test, because they don't know, I mean, yes, they start to learn the dressage test, but if you go wrong in it and you don't you don't start to kind of panic or whatever, you either, have to make your way to the judge if you've really forgotten, or you know where you went wrong and you're making your way back there. It's like, treat it like another movement. Just keep driving the exact same way. The horse doesn't need to know. And if the horse doesn't know, it shouldn't affect your marks as you go on. So yeah, the horses, they only know what we transmit to them.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, I imagine it's the same with carriage. Like, you're riding, you tense up, the horse feels your tense, and then
completely.
they can feel it through the reins as well.
That's it. Yep. They can feel it through the reins. I do a column for an online magazine called The Carriage Commentator, which is to do with all things carriage driving and kind of, general, welfare, health, all of that kind of stuff. And I literally just wrote a column on co-regulation. So, our nervous systems, and it's amazing how quickly they pick up on changes in our nervous systems. And that's from on the carriage.
It's like crazy, like, considering, because you're a little bit less attached to them, but at the same time they still know.
It's they still know, and in a way the connection needs to be even deeper, because you've got less control, because you've only got your reins, and you've got your voice, and you've got your whip. You don't have your legs and your seat and your body to communicate with them. So
that's one thing when you were talking about your the fear of the horse bolting or something like that happening. It does to me, like, it was resonating with me, because I was thinking, like, obviously if a horse bolt, it's hard enough either way, but like, at least you can clamp on with your legs, where like a carriage, it's that little bit less.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the one thing that you never want a driving horse to do. And if if a horse does it for no reason, they can't be a driving horse. I mean, it's one thing if they say got stung by something, or there was allowed something that there's a reason. But if a horse ever did it and you couldn't figure out a reason, it essentially means that they're not suitable as a driving horse.
That
unfortunately. Yeah.
So you've competed at the top level as well.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the pressure and stuff like that, but how does it feel coming out onto that stage for the first time, like, knowing that you are, like, you're international, you're representing Ireland
now? So when you're actually, say, driving into the dressage arena, all of that goes out the window, and as it should do, because you are totally focused on what you're doing at the time. The overall being at the event, representing your country, that the whole, everything that comes with that. I mean, that's amazing. Like, it's a privilege. It's exciting, it is. There is an added pressure, because you do want to do well, because you're not just there for yourself. But it's amazing. I don't know how else to even.
Is there a moment when you're like, oh my God, I'm here? Like, could you just like a pinpoint, like, was it
There's
like, yeah,
multiple times when that, yeah, multiple times that happens.
and you can just
Yeah,
see it as well. Like, I know you're not kind of not getting the words out, but you can just see it in your face, like how proud it makes you and just like how it lights you up doing it. Like, it's so great to see.
it genuinely, yeah, it really does, because I mean, it is, yeah, it's the kind of pinnacle of what, of the sport that we're doing. And yeah, 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 I don't actually have the words.
No, it's great. And I think as well, coming out and doing that, like you're showing that, you had that accident at 18. It didn't stop you.
Yeah,
You're now able to like represent your country on the like the top stage, like, and it's so cool. And I think for anyone who maybe has gone through some form of injury, or even like, a severe injury like yourself, like it's a really, it's testament to show that like you're not done yet. You can still achieve like amazing
you
heights,
can,
you know what I mean?
yeah, yep. And like everyone I've met in the para carriage driving world as well, that they've highlighted that to me as what you,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's yeah.
Do you find that helps when you, anytime you like maybe doubt yourself, or you worry, or you?
Yeah. Like, I don't want to single anyone out, but there is, there is certainly people that I think of, and they just give me, encouragement that, that something isn't the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, because they've gone there and they've done it. And yeah, it's having examples there in front of you that you can see, and you can say, okay, yeah, it is possible.
Yeah. How does it feel to know that you're that example for some person, or maybe multiple people?
Um, I mean, that feels amazing. I
Is that something you thought about before, was it?
no, it's not. Um, yeah, I mean, if that were the case, I'd be absolutely, absolutely delighted. It's, I'm not somebody who genuinely, who thinks that, oh, things happen for a reason. It's, but if you can make something good come out of something, then, then that's almost, almost the same as something happening for a reason.
I get you. Yeah, I understand
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, I think that is going to be everything I'm going to ask
Okay,
you, bar one little question.
go
I
on.
ask this to nearly everyone at the end of my episodes, and is, what is the best advice that you've ever been given?
Oh,
This is always a response again. I love it.
oh, wow.
You can pick more than one.
Can I pick more than one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so there's, and it's not so much advice. I think it's a saying, and I honestly can't even remember who said it. But it's something that I try, not always successfully, because none of us are perfect, but I try to live by, is that, is the saying that people won't necessarily remember what you did or what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So that's something that I try to, to live my life by. One advice that I do really like, and that is, because a lot of people suffer from, and I'm one of them, from imposter syndrome.
I'm here too.
And I saw somebody describe a really out of the box way of dealing with it. And that's by basically saying, well, if I'm an imposter, then I'm going to be the best freaking imposter there is. and just going for it. Just throwing yourself into stuff. I'm sure that there's something that's trying to poke its way out of my brain at the moment that in terms of advice, but it's just not coming. But they're the two things that are popping into my head. Into my
The
head
imposter
right
one
now.
is bringing that like defiance back up.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah.
I love that. That is brilliant. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today, Emma. Can you tell everybody where to find you if they're interested?
Yes, yeah, of course. So Instagram is the best place to find me. So for my mindset account is Emma Golding Mindset. And then my carriage driving account is Emma Para Carriage Driving with an underscore in between each word and that. So yeah, but you'll find me through one or the other.
I'll add them to the show notes as well, so everyone.
Thank you. Cool.
And as ever, guys, you can find me on Instagram. So I'm lesser seen on Christy H Fitness, but you will find me on at Strong the Saddle with an underscore after the E, and then my TikTok is at Strong the Saddle without the underscore because I got there before first. And then my website is www.chrissyhawkins.com. And then just want to say thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you. No, I enjoyed that.
I really do appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. So if you please could help me with the algorithm and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And even, if you want to reach out and suggest topics for me, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Drop me a DM on Instagram or TikTok. And thanks again for listening.